Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDPs, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. Currently recording this on Thursday, October 31st, 2024. So happy Halloween to you folks that celebrate. And got my Halloween costume here. If you are watching live on YouTube, Twitch, X, or Instagram Live. Now, as I mentioned on the Tuesday show, this show is being pre-recorded. So if you are watching it live right now, you will not be able, you could ask questions. I will not be able to answer them as the show will be airing and I will not be available at the time that it's being aired. So, just need to take care of some stuff tomorrow. Not going to be around. So this was the best option. Not the first time I've done this. I've done it before as well. So, for those that, are listening on podcast platforms, this doesn't change anything for you. So, just continue to comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But this is the Week 9 Fantasy Football Matchup Show. So for those that may be new to the show or not aware what this, what we do here in this show, essentially pick quarterbacks and tight ends outside the top 10 that I think, have a chance to finish inside that top 10, and running backs, wide receivers outside the top 20 that I think have a chance to finish inside that top 20. So it's more targeting those guys that are on the fence for you, the guys that you needs to, potentially, you're sitting there, you're thinking about putting them in the lineup. Should I put them in the lineup? Things like that. So definitely, those are the guys that we're going after. And all the rankings are based on the expert consensus rankings from Fantasy Pros. So, they take all of the Fantasy Pros, they take all the experts, experts in quotation marks, and, submit their rankings weekly, yours truly included, and they aggregate those rankings and they come up with an expert consensus rankings. So that's how that is formulated, and that's what we work off of. And additionally, we also then pick guys that are ranked inside those same thresholds that we think are possibly not going to finish inside that threshold. So, take a look at those guys as well. So last week, pretty good week. We gave out 19 picks. We had 8 guys beat their ECR by 10 spots or more. We had another 3 of the 19 guys beat their ECR outright. And between the big hits is what, that's what we call those guys that finish 10 spots or higher. And the hits, we had 3 guys finish inside the top 3 of their position. We also had 3 of the, we did end up with 3. Sorry. Forgive me for that one. Just a little word slip. We had 4 of the 19 as big misses and another 4 of the 19 as misses. So 8 misses in total, 11 hits, again, with 8 big hits. So again, solid week there. And, just running through like we do every week as the accountability part. Jameis Winston, he was the quarterback 23, finishes the quarterback 8. Bo Nix was the quarterback 13, finishes the quarterback 2. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback 11, finishes the quarterback 3. We called him a big hit because he did actually finish inside the top 3. So, that's what you kind of are hoping for when I give out these recommendations for guys like this. Caleb Williams on the flip side was ranked as the quarterback 6, did not see a world where he finished inside the top 10 or even the top 12, finished as a quarterback 28. Najee Harris was ranked running back 25, finished as the running back 15. Tony Pollard, I don't really want to count that as a hit per se. He finishes the running back 21 after being ranked as the running back 22. Grant Calcaterra at tight end finished as a tight end 22 after being ranked tight end 30. I don't know how much that helped everybody, especially on National Tight End Day when all the tight ends were scoring. I don't think Grant Calcaterra's production there really helped you. But moving on through the rest of the big hits there, we had Darnell Mooney finishing as the wide receiver 12 after being ranked 26. Cedric Tillman, definitely a big hit there, finished as the wide receiver 3 after being ranked as the wide receiver 50. Joshua Palmer comes in, finishing as the wide receiver 48 after being ranked 63. Ricky Pearsall finishing as a wide receiver 42 after being ranked 53. So I don't know if I misspoke there. Joshua Palmer was 63, finished as 48. But anyway, that's it in terms of the hits. In terms of the misses, Russell Wilson actually was ranked as the quarterback 21, finished as 21. We're going to call that a miss because that's not what we strive for here. Johnny Smith, big miss, finished as the tight end 30 after being ranked 20. Romeo Dobbs, wide receiver 45 after being ranked 29. Tyler Lockett finished as wide receiver 99 after being ranked 32. DeAndre Hopkins finished as a wide receiver 76 after being ranked 52. Tua Tagovailoa finished as the quarterback 20 after being ranked 16. Anthony Richardson finishes the quarterback 27 after being ranked a quarterback 18. And then Drake May, I'm actually not even going to take credit for that one because he did get injured, finishes the quarterback 26 after being ranked 25, but a lot of his production came within that first quarter of that game, as he already had even scored a rushing touchdown, so could have had an even bigger day against the New York Jets there. So, that's it for the Week 8 accountability, but let's move on to the Week 9 matchup show. Obviously, we got starts of the week coming up at the end of this as well, so stay tuned for that. But in the first matchup, we've got the New England Patriots taking on the Tennessee Titans, and I'm going with running back Ramondre Stevenson on the New England side. He is currently ranked as the ECR running back 23. He finished as a top 5 running back last week after he seemed to get his full-time role back in Week 8. Gibson also seems to be dealing with a toe injury. And like I said, those increased touches last week led him to finishing as a top 5 running back in PPR scoring. And now he's matched up against a Tennessee Titans defense that has allowed the 10th most PPR points to the running back position over their last 3 games. I think we can trust him for at least one more week here. And forgive me, guys, I'm going to kind of try to move as quickly as I can through this just because I do have to get moving. So, forgive me if it seems, like a little short today, but again, trying to make it a quick one. Moving on to the next matchup here, the Carolina Panthers against the New Orleans Saints. I'm going with Carolina wide receiver Jalen Coker. He is currently ranked as the wide receiver 57. The rookie wide receiver finished as the wide receiver 17 last week on the back of 4 catches for 78 yards and a garbage time touchdown on 6 targets. This is the second game in 4 weeks where he has at least 4 catches and at least 68 receiving yards. And now with Deontay Johnson being shipped off to Baltimore, he might continue to see even more opportunities in the passing game. The only Carolina wide receivers to play more snaps than Coker were David Moore and fellow rookie wide receiver Xavier Legette. New Orleans allows the 4th most PPR points to the wide receiver position over their last 3 weeks. The only thing that could really put a damper in this is if Adam Thielen does return. He has been on IR with a hamstring injury, but has now practiced in back-to-back practices in a limited capacity here. So actually, he's a guy that I'm looking to even add to my rosters, especially if you have an IR spot and need help at the wide receiver position. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Denver Broncos against the Carolina Panthers Denver Broncos against the Baltimore Ravens. And I'm going with Denver wide receiver Cortland Sutton. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 28. Baltimore has been getting abused by opposing pass defenses. Sutton bounced back in a big way last week with 8 catches for 100 receiving yards on 11 targets against Carolina, and now faces off against a Baltimore defense that has allowed the 2nd most PPR points to the wide receiver position over their last 3 games. As Bo Nix's top guy, he should be in for a big day as the Broncos probably play from behind in this one. And you guys really didn't think I was going to leave him out, right? Come on. Gotta go with Bo Nix. ECR quarterback 15. Of course, I have to get him on this list after finishing as the quarterback 2 last week. Things actually only really get better for him here as he faces off against a Baltimore defense that over the last 3 weeks have allowed the most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. I alluded to being pretty high on Bo Nix this week, last week. Just kind of looking ahead to this matchup here against Baltimore, knowing how bad Baltimore has been and how well Bo Nix has been playing. And with him coming off of his best game, probably isn't going to best that as he is a 9.5-point dog here. Last week, there was a lot of positive game scripts for him. Playing from ahead is much easier than playing from behind. And so Bo Nix, I love the matchup here. I do think the Broncos can cover the 9.5, so I don't see him getting completely blown out. But it could also be one of those cases where he keeps it close to the end, and maybe the Ravens start to pull away in that fourth quarter there. But I definitely, when you combine how bad the Ravens have been as a pass defense and what Bo Nix is able to do with his legs, I think a QB1 finish is definitely in the range of outcomes here for him. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Vegas Raiders traveling to Cincinnati. And give me Las Vegas wide receiver Jacoby Myers. He's the ECR PPR wide receiver 27. He's the clear Robin to Brock Bowers' Batman. Myers continued reaping the benefits of the absence of Devontae Adams as he missed the previous 2 games, but prior to that was definitely involved in the passing game. And he came back strong to finish as a wide receiver 2 in PPR scoring, and should finish in that range again against the Cincinnati Bengals. Moving on to the next game here, the LA Chargers taking on the Cleveland Browns. First up, I got 2 guys here. Give me Justin Herbert as the quarterback 24 in ECR rankings. Herbert has been trending in the right direction in the last couple of weeks and now lands in a nice spot against Cleveland this week, who have allowed the 11th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks over their last 3 games. We saw Herbert rush for 49 yards last week, which could also indicate that he's even healthier than he's been in recent weeks, as he's farther removed here from that ankle/knee issue that was bothering him. And to stack this up here, let me get LA Chargers wide receiver Joshua Palmer, who's the wide receiver 62. Now, I guess I can't seem to quit Josh Palmer, apparently. Obviously, we know Ladd McConkey, and I'd love to play him this week. But I do want to bring some attention to Palmer, who now has back-to-back games of at least 60-plus receiving yards and walks into a matchup against Cleveland that allows the 3rd most fantasy points over their last 3 games to opposing wide receivers. I think he's in wide receiver 3 territory with upside for more here. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. And give me Buffalo wide receiver Amari Cooper. He's the wide receiver 26. And Cooper has seen his snap percentage go up in 2 straight weeks since being traded to Buffalo. The matchup here isn't particularly great, but I'm calling my shot here that Cooper, with some increased opportunities and increased playing time, will bring back a wide receiver 2 finish here for us. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And Dallas wide receiver Jalen Tolbert, ranked as the ECR wide receiver 45. It's been a while since we talked about Tolbert in any capacity, but he's the second wide receiver on this team behind CeeDee Lamb, and this week faces off against an Atlanta defense that is allowing the 11th most PPR points to the position over their last 3 games here. Moving on to the next matchup between Washington and the New York Giants. Give me Washington running back Brian Robinson. He's ranked as the PPR running back 21. Robinson finally seems to be getting healthier as he saw his regular workload last week against Chicago. Just happened to not be the best matchup for him, but now faces off against a New York Giants defense that over the last 3 weeks has allowed the 9th most PPR points to the position. So I do like Robinson this week to bounce back in a nice way for us here. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got the Chicago Bears taking on the Arizona Cardinals. And give me Chicago wide receiver Rome Odunze. Odunze ranked as the wide receiver 48 this week. Gave us a little glimpse of that rookie after the bye week that I talked about earlier this week on the waiver show. And this past week seemed to be more involved in the offense coming out of the bye. And now, unfortunately, Last week was a tough matchup against an improved Washington pass defense, but fortunately for us, this week he gets an Arizona defense that has allowed the seventh most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers over their last 3 games. Moving on to the next matchup, we've got Jacksonville traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Philadelphia Eagles. And Dearness Johnson going deep in the bag here, as Dearness Johnson is ranked as the running back 52. But Tank Bigsby's banged up. Travis Etienne is also banged up. So Dearness Johnson has an opportunity here to play an even bigger role at running back for the Jags. Not to mention the injuries to the pass catchers for Jacksonville, as Christian Kirk is out for the year and Brian Thomas Jr. is dealing with a chest injury. So already operating as the passing down back without ETN, he could see more opportunities, as the Jags are 7.5-point dogs on the road here, and they should be throwing the ball pretty frequently. This is not a start of the week or RB2 type finish. I'm just projecting him as an RB3 potentially, dependent on the health of these other 2 running backs here. But this is, really purely a desperation play for you here with Dearness Johnson. So don't count on him for too much. But moving on to the next game, we've got the LA Rams traveling to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. And I didn't really love this game. I didn't really love a lot of players in it. But I'm going with Noah Fant, the Seattle tight end, who is ranked as the tight end 19. Fant is so hit or miss that honestly, again, I don't enjoy recommending him, but he's had at least 60 plus receiving yards in 2 of his last 3 games and faces off against an LA Rams defense here that does allow the 5th most fantasy points in PPR scoring to opposing tight ends over their last 3 games here. So if somebody is, going to potentially have a good day here outside of Kenneth Walker on the Seattle side, assuming DK Metcalf is still out, then for me that would probably be Noah Fant. But moving on to the next matchup here, we've got the Detroit Lions taking on the Green Bay Packers, and give me Jared Goff. I see ranked as a quarterback 14. Now, I know about the Jared Goff road home splits. I know about the outdoor versus indoor splits, but Goff has been playing really well this year. And while Green Bay doesn't allow a ton of fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, statistically, they allow the 10th most passing yards per game and the 13th highest touchdown rate to opposing quarterbacks here. So Goff, who has been efficient this year, especially down in the red zone, I trust him to give us a QB1 finish this week, and I wouldn't shy away from him, not this week. Moving on to the next matchup, Sunday Night Football, we've got the Indianapolis Colts traveling to Minnesota to take on the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm going with Indianapolis wide receiver Michael Pittman. He's ranked as the wide receiver 29 this week. And guys, if Anthony Richardson was starting this week, we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now, regardless of the matchup. But with Joe Flacco under center, I feel much better about Pittman's outlook this week and potentially rest the season here. So this matchup this weekend is actually really nice, as Minnesota over their last 3 games has allowed the most PPR points to opposing wide receivers. Actually, Minnesota has been on a run of just getting killed by opposing wide receivers. I think it's now 5 straight games that they've allowed a 100-yard receiver with Puka Nacua, basically coming off of injured reserve and dropping 100 yards on their head. So, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, both in play. Downs already inside this top 20, but Michael Pittman Jr. definitely needs some love this week as well. Moving on to the last matchup of the week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. And give me Tampa Bay running back Bucky Irving, who's ranked as a running back 28. The Tampa Bay running backs have combined for more than a 20% target share in each of the last 2 games. And Irving last week saw a 15% target share. Now, both weeks, Tampa Bay was playing from behind and also dealing with wide receivers injuries as well. So one of those things is definitely true this week, and the other is projected to be true, as the Bucs are 8.5-point dogs on the road here against Kansas City. So I totally expect Irving, who is dealing with an injury, by the way, so definitely monitor that. Todd Bowles did say it's something that he'll have to manage all year, but didn't seem to slow him down last week. But I totally expect Irving to continue to be involved in the passing game, especially this week against Kansas City, and give us a RB2 type finish this week. Now, moving on to the starts of the week for week 9. Last week, somewhat of a down week there. Um, at quarterback, Jordan Love, he got injured and failed to, bring back that QB1 performance that we were projecting against the Jacksonville Jags. At running back, I'm blanking about who my running back start of the week is. Who my running back start of the week was last week. Okay, Javonte Williams against Carolina. The Denver Broncos absolutely demolished the Carolina Panthers there, and Javonte Williams just did not get a ton of opportunities, especially as they were blowing them out. And Bo Nix, converted, had 3 passing touchdowns and a rushing touchdown there. So pretty hard to to bring back some RB1 type value there when that happens. At wide receiver, oh man, guys, why am I blanking? I'm sorry about this. At wide receiver, for my wide receiver start of the week last week, it was, bear with me. Wide receiver start of the week last week was Tyreek Hill against Arizona Cardinals, and he obviously did not do great against Arizona. The targets were there, yardage was up there, but we didn't see those big plays. We didn't see the touchdowns that we want to see from Tyreek Hill. And then Kyle Pitts was the only one that really came through for us last week, as he finished as the tight end 2 overall, scoring 2 touchdowns, had over 90 receiving yards against the against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there. So let's see what this week brings us. And I talked about it last week. Quarterback start of the week, you know where I'm going. Bo Nix against the Baltimore Ravens. We talked about it just now in the matchup show. Number 1 matchup here for opposing quarterbacks over the last 3 games. Bo Nix has been on one. Coming off his best passing game of the season, and he's continuing to use his legs, whether that's rushing for yards or rushing for touchdowns. So in a game here against the Baltimore Ravens, I totally expect Bo Nix to continue to flourish here for us and give us a QB1 finish. Moving on to the running back start of the week. Give me Indianapolis running back Jonathan Taylor against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, we talked about what Joe Flacco could do for this Indianapolis offense, and that means in all the a bunch of different capacities, what he could do for the passing game, but also what he does for the running game as well, because Anthony Richardson steals some of those, steals some rush attempts, also steals some of the goal line opportunities. Not that there have been many goal line opportunities there for the Indianapolis Colts, because their offense has been pretty putrid when Anthony Richardson is in there. But when Joe Flacco is in there, we know those run attempts, those rush attempts, those are going to go to Jonathan Taylor. Those rushing touchdowns down by the goal line, they're going to go to Jonathan Taylor. And those incompletions now potentially become completions, which then become first downs, which then extend the drive, which then create scoring opportunities. So I like Jonathan Taylor to ball out for us in an improved offense here against a Minnesota defense that allows the 11th most PPR points to opposing running backs. Moving on to the wide receiver start of the week. Let's get a stat going here. Denver wide receiver Cortland Sutton against the Baltimore Ravens. Talked about him at the during the matchup portion of the show, going up against the Baltimore defense that has allowed the 2nd most PPR points to opposing wide receivers, and balled out last week on 11 targets, 8 catches, 100 receiving yards. Did not get in the end zone there, but in a game where they're playing from behind, Bo Nix has a good matchup. Cortland Sutton has a good matchup. It's just fantasy music to my ears. And moving on to the tight end start of the week, I want to prove that it was not a fluke. It was not because it was National Tight End Day. Kyle Pitts back to the well again against the Dallas Cowboys, who allow the 4th most PPR points to the tight end position. And Kyle Pitts is on a heater right now. 4 straight games with at least 60-plus receiving yards. Had coming off a 2 touchdown game. Kyle Pitts is he's been balling. And, finally, it only took 4 years to get to this point. Well, let's just call it 4.5, because the first half of the season was, left a lot to be desired. But now this week against the Dallas Cowboys, I think he's going to continue his ascension into the top of the tight end ranks. Guys, that is all we got. that's all I got here. So again, appreciate y'all. Appreciate the patience. Just make sure you're tapped in, plugged into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics podcast. Make sure you're following me on Instagram and Twitter, or Instagram and X at the real Jon Jeune _FF. Make sure you're following the show at FF Diagnostics, and we'll catch y'all on Tuesday to talk waivers. Good luck this week, and see you later. Peace.